This week's challenge came from data schooler Tom Smith. So thanks so much for writing this challenge for us, Tom. It's been a great one to practice many prep skills. So what we have here is a list of all the properties that are owned. We know when the contract started, the contract ended, and therefore if we're wanting to work out the rent that we'll receive from each property for each month, then we will need to do a little bit of scaffolding to this data set. So in order to prepare us to scaffold, let's take care of a few of those date calculations that we were asked for in the requirements. So first up, we want to know the contract length. So if we do a date diff on the month between the contract start and the contract end date, then we'll get a numeric field which will tell us the length of that contract. Similarly, if we want to know the months until expiry, then we use a date diff between today and the contract end. So if you're doing this challenge in the future, then you could replace this today with the date of the 13th of April, just to make sure that that stays in line with the solution. Okay, now before we move on to scaffolding, we're going to do another extra step where we roll back our contract start and end dates to the first of the month. So in order to do that, we use a date trunk function to date trunk each of these contract start and contract ends to the month level. This is because when we scaffold using the new rows step, it seems to add on a number of days when we're adding on months rather than just adding one to the month number. And so when that contract start date or end date is sort of towards the end of the month, then it can cause a little bit of the results that you wouldn't quite expect. So if you did run into that problem as well, then this is one way to get around it. Okay, now comes in some additional data that we've got about each of these offices. So we know the city, the office size, how many people are in there, and our rent per month. So we join those together on the city and the office size. We have our 20 rows going forwards. We can just remove a few of the unnecessary fields here. And now it's time to do that scaffolding. So we're using the new rows step and we're saying that our contract start month and contract month end. That's the dates that we want to fill in between. We call this field name month divider. We make sure that we're increasing by 1 month each time, and we're copying the values from the previous row in that scaffolding. Okay, but as this is a great less than or equal to sign, sorry, here, we actually want this to be just a less than sign, which you can't currently control in the new rows step. So we need to do a little bit of additional filtering here. So if we take a look at this filtering, what we need to do is make sure that our contract end month isn't equal to our month divider field. That's because when the contract ends, we're not going to be charging them rent for another month after that because they won't be occupying the building anymore. Okay, so we need to make sure that we do that. And then when we do that, we see that every ID that we have is now equal to the contract length. So for example, here 1 is equal to 48. So that's the number of rows that we have, which is great. Now, if we want to look at the cumulative cost, then we're going to use that cheeky window sum function that we have in Prep that we're used to using in Tableau Desktop. So we're going to partition on the company. We're going to order by the month divider field in ascending order and window sum that rent per month so that we get that cumulative cost. And that takes us to our first output. For our second output, we're going to create our Eoi and Current Fields. So the way that we do that, we're saying if today, again, if you're doing this in the future, change that to be a 13th of April date there. So if that's greater than the month divider, then we'll include the rent per month. So that's the rent that's already been paid. Okay, so that's what we're trying to get to here. So we do that, and then we group by each year and we sum that field that we've made so that we know for each year how much rent has been paid. So this 2021 won't update, and this 2022 would continue to update as we go through the year, as that today gets later and later. And that brings us to our second output. So again, thanks very much, Tom, for this challenge. Hope you enjoyed, and thanks very much for watching.